Ready or Not has some really thought-provoking maps that get the cogs in your brain moving through emotive music, allusions to something grander, and outright showing you a dark reality that many are oblivious to. But enough of the high school essay language. Some of these maps are great to play on, and some of them are truly a test of the human spirit, which is why we are getting every single map from Ready or Not and putting them on a tier list. I know, how original, but we will be basing them on how fun they are, how good some of the story elements present themselves, and most importantly, if I got excited to play them when me and the boys used to crack open a beer and game regularly. But I present to you the ultimate Ready or Not map tier list. Opinions may vary. There isn't a better map than the introduction map of Thank You Come Again, where a bunch of drug addicts have stormed a gas station with some civilians being caught in the crossfire, and you have to go in and bring order to chaos. Similar to SWAT 4's first map that has you raid a Chinese restaurant, it has a decent amount of suspects and civilians to get you introduced to the gameplay mechanics without having you worry about heavily armored suspects. The map layout is very straightforward with very little off angles, barring this section here that can cause problems if you rush out, resulting in you being shot in between the glass. Coupled with the suppression and the glare, it's difficult to actually return fire, but new players do need a reality check like that to give them the impression that if they aren't careful, they'll get team wiped. In terms of atmosphere and theming, seeing the dead bodies littered around does give you the idea that this game is messed up and won't hold back. Terms and conditions apply. I like the detail of the Good Samaritan, who lore-wise is a veteran that had their gun jam whilst trying to fight the robbers. You even have to rescue a child that was caught in the mess, giving you the impression that children aren't protected from the chaos, which, look, it's bad, but the worst part of this map is the dead dog, which does kind of kill any sympathy I have for these guys, but the map flows really well. It is a monster size and it's pretty small and compact, but it has a variation of mid to close range engagements and has lots of breaching opportunities to keep you on your toes. And quite frankly, it's a perfect warm-up map. I don't have proof, but I swear to God as my witness, I beat this map in under 2.5 minutes once, but it's just a great introduction to the game, and the game mechanics are sort of a tutorial level. Moving on to 23 megabytes per second. I still don't know what the significance of 23 is other than to mock Australian download speeds, but you raid an apartment block because a troll has caused a swatting incident to a streamer, which unravels one of the biggest bits of story of this game, which is, well, we're all kind of aware, but the map for the most part is great because it introduces the player to more in-depth skills and has them actually analyze the map layout. You can run right through the front, but risk getting shot from the high ground, which is still a pain for someone experienced like me, or you can go off to the side and breach a Bitcoin farming room before making your way out into the open area where you still are at a bit of a tactical disadvantage, but the suspects have higher powered weapons causing more suppression, but they aren't wearing body armor, so if you haven't changed your ammo to FMJs, you're still competitive. Jumping back onto the fact that this map makes you use your brain a little more, I love how there is this little vent where you can have one guy spam gas grenades or flash grenades while the rest breach the main door to the suspect's apartment, when you realize that this guy plays video games all day and lives in a bigger place than you. Like and subscribe please. But I have never been a fan of the AI art, and I will continue to criticize it, especially given the fact that they could have paid 2 shekels to get a decent Guna material from DeviantArt, which ironically, for research reasons, I checked it out, and that also has a lot of AI art, which I'm a little bit disappointed in. But I do like the little clues scattered around that reveals this guy is up to no good and you have stumbled on a grander conspiracy. But gameplay wise, the map is small, compact, and it gives me the Raid from the movie kind of vibes where you have stumbled into an apartment block where you clearly aren't welcome in and you're fighting for your life. Breaching the main apartment is always fun, but can be an absolute meat grinder if the flashbangs don't reach far enough or outright don't work, but it is pretty chaotic as you storm through the front door. But honestly, I think it's just fun, small, compact, and I really enjoy it, which is why I'm going to be putting it in A tier. Moving on to a Twisted Nerve, better known as the Crack House. ironically it's a meth house, but that doesn't have the same ring to it. This map is simple and to the point with some horror elements to it, like crackheads ambushing you with knives, a pitch dark tunnel that can be a pain to clear as suspects who, mind you, have no MVGs are still more accurate than you with them. I have criticized this map in the past for the inclusion of the second house, which I'm not a fan of, as it makes the map feel like it drags on a little longer than it should, but the map is easy and can be cleared without any issues. Now, staying on the topic of the crackheads running at you with a knife, it's sort of an old trauma for me, because years ago, they would have this ice skating effect and would lock onto you. It's as if they are using Commando Pro from MW2. As unfortunate as it is, I do miss when they would use hiding spots more in early access, but that has been toned down over the years. Another grievance is with suspects outside that are able to take accurate pot shots at you when you are clearing the second story of the main house because they saw 1 pixel of you through the glass. But if you are trying to learn how to use less than lethal, I find this the perfect map because it's close quarters and can isolate a lot of suspects to allow you to practice breaching and land accurate shots with the beanbag launcher without having to worry about long range fights. But there is a bit of those moments, but it's good practice. Personally, if they remove the second house or even the tunnel system entirely like they did in early access where they had it separated, I would probably enjoy this map a little more as it kind of borders into tedium territory, but the map as a whole is pretty horrifying to play as it's very dark, and also there's the big reveal, or semi-big reveal. There are much more bigger reveals later on in the game, but yes, they did tone down the child, but it still kind of has that same effect of seeing a vulnerable person in a situation like this. But I do like how they go ahead and include it, because they could have just said, you know, hey, we don't want to have any controversies, we can just go ahead and remove the child entirely. But I do like how they did keep it in, as it, especially before it got changed, it was pretty diabolical to kind of see. And I do like maps that are sort of in your face about some of these topics, but gameplay wise, it's a fun map. I can't complain, but as I mentioned, bordering on tedium territory because of some areas, which is why I'm going to be putting it in B tier. Moving on to the Spider, which has you rate a seemingly normal talent agency where kids are taken to the slums and exposed to this in hopes of them landing a gig to earn money, which in reality they are scooped up by Amos Vole. The primary suspect in this level is George Brixley, who is a former soldier who was highly decorated, and you have to arrest him, which isn't an easy task since he is quick to grab a hostage, which can bug out at times, or he can turn the gun on himself, which is pretty visceral and I love it. The gameplay is pretty decent, featuring a small map with lots of close quarter fights, but some semi-open choke points that can be challenging, such as the main area that has blind spots for grenades. The hard part of this map is definitely the outside area, since entering it can cause you to get hit from the alleyway or even from up top, and it doesn't help that there is usually a homeless person just chilling down there. As a fun fact, one of them actually phoned it in, but was mocked. I do hope they gave him a medal or at least a nice bowl of soup, but from the moment you spawn in, everything just feels dirty and highlights the economic situation of LS, which makes it clear as you walk into this place and see what lies beyond the face of this agency, and the desperation that some of these parents must have been feeling to take their children to this hellhole of a neighborhood. The suspects are low-level goons without body armor, but have decent weaponry, and it can be a challenge, especially in the outside area. I like to call this particular section Death Alley because the one homeless person always ends up between me and the suspects, and they end up catching a stray bullet to the face. Not because of me, 80% of the time, but all in all, it's just a dirty and slimy level with good gameplay, which is why I'm going to be putting it in A tier. Moving on to a lethal obsession, which is very reminiscent of the Fairfax residents of SWAT 4 due to there only being 1 to 2 suspects who is unpredictable, and especially the main suspect being a complete nut job. But despite that, it's pretty fun to play. The map does best through its atmosphere by showing you the derangement of the suspect, and it gets worse from top to bottom. As you walk through the front door, you can see the dilapidation, and it just gets worse the the deeper you go. Now, this map catches a lot of people off guard, myself included, because there's 2 to 3 suspects max. Just hit them with a barrage of flashbangs and gas and it'll be a walk in the park. Yeah, that's far from the case, because trying to actually arrest this guy is a pain since he scurries like a rat through the walls and is able to mow you down, which can be said about a lot of the suspects, but it's especially bad with this one since this guy is on some freaking crack, and when you try to pursue him, you open up the one door that coincidentally has a trap. The map is decent and it does the storytelling well and kind of gives the player the opposite of "you are locked in here with me" kind of expression. It's simple and a good, quick game, but look, I know I shouldn't do this, but if we were to compare this to the Fairfax Residence, I mean, you can't really compare them. They're on a different plane, but I'd put this map in this tier. I remember when Ready or Not released into 1.0 and I was grinding the hell out of this game. The first couple of maps were a walk in the park until I hit my first roadblock, which was Ides of March, which has a group of veterans attempt to assassinate the governor because, just like the name intends, they felt left behind. The reason why this map is hard is because the suspects are smart and are able to put up a strong fight, whilst being heavily armored. The map layout is really well done, giving you this ring layout where you can do a loop of clearing out the rooms. If you're smart, you'll wedge the middle section and the outlying doors before breaching from one end, essentially creating a funnel and boxing the suspects in. Usually, door wedges are great on large maps, but on a small map like this, they are perfect. Each room has its own distinct personality and some neighborly drama, which is pretty funny to read. But in terms of difficulty, I'll be honest, at 1.0 this was a speed hump map. I had heaps of trouble trying to beat it, especially given the state of the AI at the time, as well as in the current game. But for a new player, I imagine it's still just as difficult, since you go against suspects with armor, good weaponry, and are much stronger and coordinated. But it's a tight, small map that's difficult by all means, but it's not tedious. This isn't a tedious map except for that one section with the glass. Even back in the beta, my god, that was fucking terrorism of a map, but I really like it, and it's just fun, quick, compact, but an actual challenge for an experienced player, and I will be putting it in S tier. Oh boy, Sinuous Trail. This map in its early stages before the AI had been worked on, and I'm doing the bunny ears in real life, but you can't see that, but this map was an absolute demon to play on, but thankfully has been toned down a little bit over the years. It involves raiding a data center that is allegedly hosting content, but the funny lore bit of this map is that they've had fake police officers show up in the past, which has caused the data center to get armed security. Now, logically, rather than ask for a search warrant or ask for a supervisor or even call the police, they decide to fight to the death in what I can only say is a D-Day equivalent, because if you try to go headfirst through the server room, you will get absolutely decimated from suspects that are on the first floor, or get shot through the glass with very little time to counterfire. In my opinion, it's still definitely one of the harder maps, mostly because of the way it's laid out, which on paper seems pretty small, but in reality there's so many angles that can cause you to get hit from. It doesn't have anything over the top in terms of theming, and it's pretty toned down, which I like, but it's just a standard workplace with a couple of clues where, if you look closely, that indicate that this place is up to no good. It's a difficult map and I just flat out don't enjoy playing on it, but it is vanilla in terms of setting, which is why I'm going to be putting it in D tier. It's just not fun to play on, in my opinion. One of the biggest criticisms about Ready or Not is that a lot of these maps can be over the top, like go and raid this PDF ring, a bunch of terrorists have stormed this building, and really you just end up thinking that these people are terrible, irredeemable. I don't care if I gun down the suspects indiscriminately, because with all due respect, if the rule of law didn't exist, Amos Vol would end up like this. But I love the maps where we can say, I felt bad for killing them because I somewhat sympathize with the suspects, which is shown in possibly the best and one of my personal favorite maps, the Ends of the Earth, where you have to raid a seemingly normal suburban home that is manufacturing 3D printed firearms to pay for their mother's medical bills, coupled in with the abundant social commentary of this game about how ordinary people are forgotten about by the government. You can tell this family has no other choice, and they literally and metaphorically have gone to the ends of the earth to provide for their mother. I stole that from the wiki, that's not an original thought, but I haven't even talked about the map itself. The map itself is small and not stressful, with a couple of suspects being the sons and the father and mother as the civilians. Trying to move your way through the floors can be a little challenging, and they have the high ground, but it's nothing a flashbang or gas can't solve. Suspects aren't heavily armed, but can put up a fight. As a matter of fact, they can be very aggressive, which has caused one of my friends to put a Full Metal Jacket bullet through the wall, which has accidentally taken out the mother, but it encourages you to use all less than lethal options at your disposal to arrest as many suspects as possible. I also love the ambience. It's eerie, quiet, no noise except for the sound of the ocean, as if it's a final stand with just the sons and the police, who sort of gives this fight for survival kind of vibe. It's just such a small, simple map, but it's not stressful to play, where you feel like you are, for some reason, a SWAT team that is hopelessly undermanned and undergunned, which technically is the proper law of the game, but you know, the other maps gives you like you're completely fucked kind of vibe. This map gives you an even playing field kind of vibe, but in this map you feel like a dominant force that is here to shut down an illegal operation, regardless if it's morally right. But I can't fault this map, genuinely. I mean, it's pretty obvious. I can't put it in any tier lower than S. It's just a pleasure to play. Moving on to the map that is responsible for every Ready or Not player's mental anguish, this map is infamous, and that is the post office, where you put up the LSPD badge and take up possibly the one role of the police organization in America that everyone collectively agrees is a force for good, and that is USPIS. A group of detectives went to investigate the post office because weapons were being smuggled out of it, and that resulted in a shootout. Some civilians have found themselves in the crossfire that you must arrest. But why is this map a pain to play? Well, for starters, it's large in size. You could try and clear the outside first, sort of securing the perimeter of sorts, but you'll find that the average gamer doesn't possess the motor functions to hit a moving target that is tap firing you like they have a macro from long range. Coupled with the suppression and the fact flashbangs and gas grenades seem to not be as effective given it's a large open space outdoors, it can be hard going this way. On the other hand, you could go through the front to clear out the main warehouse area, except this is like that question where you have two doors and one of the doors has a line behind it, except it doesn't look like this, it looks like this, because you get absolutely mowed down as soon as you open this door. You can throw smokes, flashes, but you can't throw them deep enough, and admittingly it does require a bit of coordination with your teammates. If you're using bots, then God bless you, but you can use a flashbang grenade launcher to hit the people that are hiding down long or sitting up on the railing, but if you don't do that, then you're gonna have a very hard time. You also need to arrest this double-crossing dipshit who just looks ridiculous and can be a pain to arrest. There's also little gaps as you walk around the warehouse that suspects can shoot you in between, and of course, trying to return fire is a very difficult task. I avoid playing this map with my mates simply because those reasons make it just not fun or enjoyable unless you want to get the USPIS mod and roleplay. But in terms of theming and atmosphere, it's not over the top, I'll give it that, and it can feel grounded compared to some of the other maps in the game, which is a bonus. But some people like these fucking large, extremely difficult maps. Not me. I just think this is torture, and on behalf of every Ready or Not player that has had their life expectancy decreased due to it, I'm gonna put this right at the bottom where it belongs, and I can already see the comments. If there was a tactical shooter YouTuber tier list based on skill, I'd be going right at the bottom where I belong. Moving on to the next map, and that is Valley of the Dolls, where you need to raid a house in the Hollywood Hills that belongs to a man who has done some just diabolical diabolical things, and many people go into this map ready to shut the whole thing down, guns blazing, but you can't do that. You must arrest the primary suspect and bring him to justice. I like this because it emphasizes the restraint that police officers hopefully abide by, regardless if a collective mob agrees this person, quite frankly, shouldn't be living amongst general society, but the decor shows this person's personality of being a complete deviant. I absolutely love the contrast that is shown on this map. Above ground, visible to the general public, this man is celebrating his own daughter's 18th birthday. Seems normal for the most part, but when you go downstairs, it highlights what isn't visible to the public that can only be described as just vile. Barrels filled with bodies of children that have parents that'll never celebrate an 18th birthday, a staging room, a dark room that has technically been censored but still gets the point across, mass amounts of DVDs with the children's name and age, and the fact that there is so much and that this has gone on for so long. And I just love how it's sort of hiding from public view, if you kind of get where I'm coming from with that. But I have to give this credit. It's hard typing this script without feeling just a little bit sick in a way, and this can cause some players to understandably want to execute the main suspect, but as a police officer, you can't make those decisions. That's why this map makes it an objective to arrest him. But the map itself, gameplay wise, is on the larger side, and I'd say it's pretty linear with a couple of frustrating areas, like going anywhere near the glass is a death sentence. Trying to breach this main living area is what I'd call it a complete kill zone, because you need lots of flashes, and when you breach, it's just utter chaos, and there's always one guy that always ends up getting killed when you breach through here, which is sort of why going from the other end is probably safer. But the map contains suspects with decent weaponry and body armor, but they aren't too difficult to deal with. Now, all things considered, this map is iconic. It has its difficulty quirks, and some people can complain Ready or Not has gone over the top with the child stuff where every suspect ends up involved in this operation, primarily with the main story, but I will give this map a pass on that criticism because it's pretty fun to play, and I like that sort of moral argument of whether, hey, does he kind of deserve it? He technically does, but, should we really resulting in mob justice? That's sort of like, as I mentioned earlier, the high school essay analysis that I'm bringing to it. But before I give this map a ranking, I just wanted to say the reason why this map is very special to me is because I remember when this update went into the game, I was flying around the map in free cam and I was just checking it out, and then I stumbled upon this area and it freaked me out at first. And then all I was thinking back in like 2022, my mates are gonna freaking love this. I'm not gonna spoil it for them, but they have to see this. And then we loaded up the game and it was a pretty cool experience. And as I mentioned, just an iconic map that isn't unfair, and I'm gonna put it in S tier. Moving on to the next map, which is the result of years of controversy at the prospect of making a level based on the elephant of a topic that this level portrays, where a group of armed students go into a university and, well, they just start gunning everyone down and planting bombs. Ready or Not in its early days were dead set on releasing a school shooting level. People expected a high school, but we got a uni instead, but it still gets the messaging across, which compared to Ends of the Earth, where there is a moral argument to be had, I think we can all agree that this is just a terrible thing all round, and we don't feel necessarily any empathy towards the suspects. The cool thing about this map is that it does give a rushed feeling, because if you spend the limited amount of time bagging all the pieces of evidence, trying to arrest all the suspects and civilians, which, by the way, if you aren't aware, there is a move to exit command, and after a certain amount of time, the suspects will just start opening fire on civilians and they will go into this seek mode, and it can be pretty jarring as you're bandaging yourself and you can hear halfway across the school just gunshots, and also of course talk grilling you as a result, and you just have to sit there and take it. But you have to be really quick, and if it looks like they aren't going to surrender, honestly you're better off just opening fire, or at the very least trying to hit them with the taser and bash them, but of course you're limited on time. Did I also mention you have to find 2 bombs and defuse them, which has led to some funny and tense moments of panic where you just end up running in circles and then get blown up. It's a tough and intense map and a nice break from the usual gameplay loop of obliterate a room with utility, clear it out, secure the suspects and civilians, but instead I'd say it takes a more realistic approach. Of course, man that has never fired a gun or seen any combat or has any police experience is saying what's realistic, but based on what I've seen on those police activity videos, tell the civilians to run as far away as possible and then go straight towards the suspect to try and minimize the casualties. And that's the gameplay of this map. But look, of course, we're talking about Ready or Not here, which as a game has its quirks when it comes to suspect AI. Fun-wise, it's not an S tier map, but I do like how it's something different gameplay-wise, and I think it's a strong B tier in my opinion. The next map is something straight out of Sicario, and that is Rust Belt, where you have to shut down a smuggling ring that has people coming from across the border, which really gets you thinking, if America looks like this, how worse off can Mexico be, or really anywhere else in the world based on the law of this world? But I'm gonna be honest, I don't like this map. Just straight up, because it goes beyond what I think SWAT usually does, and instead I feel like an ICE agent or border patrol agent. The setting isn't something I personally like, as you have to clear out a long tunnel that is somewhat linear, but somehow also a maze at the same time. So it's not too difficult, but there are some long range bits that can funnel you into where your teammates sort of just get wiped off one by one. The ending area is pretty cool, especially with the glowing eyes that are staring at you from a distance. The suspects aren't too difficult, but can catch you by surprise at certain points. A lot of people seem to like this map, but it's one I've never been able to like, both from the theming. I don't like that Wild West desert sort of theme, or Mexican theme, I suppose. I'm someone who just prefers suburbia and cities, sort of what a metropolitan police force would respond to, like maps like just the crack house or like a gas station. I prefer that over going out into the countryside, but I find it tedious in the tunnel having to go through each of the rooms, and you end up getting lost and you have to use the glow sticks, and then you have to make sure every suspect that is hiding gets arrested. Now, the thing is, it's not a bad map, I just think it's one of the most overhyped levels in the game, and it just doesn't get my adrenaline pumping as much as the other maps, and I don't really have a whole lot to say about it because I just don't voluntarily play it ever. And I was gonna initially put it in C tier, but after reading it out loud, I'm gonna just put it in F tier. I never really want to play this map ever. The next map is the replacement we got for the old hotel map, which for those that don't know, in terms of marketing, was like Dust 2 or Hawaii City from RS2 or Tilted Towers when that was a thing. And the hotel map got the Stalin treatment and the Clemente Hotel took its place, and truthfully it's a much better map and I love it. Your initial impressions is spawning in on a skyscraper with the rain and the glow of the big neon sign, but when you walk in, I love the theme of the hotel honoring all the past US presidents, but it contrasts to what you were dealing with. You have to deal with rogue Secret Service agents who are sympathetic to the people from Breezer Cove. I'm gonna whip out some high school level analysis, so just bear with me for a moment. But the hotel represents America and what it stands for, but it's rotten with internal squabbles and corruption, if you can kind of get what I mean, and it's amplified by the Star Spangled Banner ironically playing in a depressed, borderline distressed tone. Look, I love maps that have you think and theorize based on the setting, but the gameplay itself is fun but very challenging, as these Secret Service agents have decent weaponry with body armor, and I do recommend you avoid going near this ledge in particular, as you will get shot from below. There are traps on this map, but I found them to be mostly non-lethal. I don't think I died from any of them. It requires coordination to go from the top floor to the bottom, as it can become a choke point if you don't use enough utility. But the map itself isn't long, and when we compare it to the old hotel map, which in my opinion was the literal or epitome of the definition of tedium, which I always found it funny when people say the old hotel map was amazing, they need to bring it back. I mean, I do hope they bring it back. It was practically done. They just Stalined it. And look, I'm kind of just monologuing from my previous video. I'm not going to go too much into it, but the rework or the remake of that map is, in my opinion, much better, and it's an all-round great map, which is why I'm going to be putting it in Moving on to another map that has a history of being controversial, and that is the Neon nightclub, where a group of Yemeni terrorists have, well, the video kind of speaks for itself, but this map is just a beautiful culmination of difficulty and sensory overload. If this video was based on difficulty, I'd put it in S tier, but not because the opponents you go against are repping heavy armor with fully automatic LMGs that you'll find only in a war zone or in Texas, but they can knock you out in a couple of shots. But the straight up seizure risk of the bright lights is possibly what makes this map very difficult. If you are brave enough, you can go right into the main dance floor, and if the mountains of bodies don't distract you, the pumping music will, which gives the enemy about 50 different areas for them to shoot you at. And shooting back is incredibly challenging with the darkness and suppression. I like to go along the side and clear out the back areas, which have their own unique challenges with the stupid glass and the fact you need to arrest the primary suspect, who can be hard to distinguish from the ordinary goons. On other maps, having a crackhead run at you with a knife, it's just British cultural enrichment. Having a Middle Eastern man run at you with a bomb strapped to them is, well, still less than ideal, but the civilians also have them strapped to them, and if they die, they explode, ending the mission very quickly. Now, this map, in my opinion, I'd say it's peak, because with everything I previously mentioned, but also the fact it doesn't feel too hard once you learn an efficient route, it does put to the test a lot of the skills you would have learned from earlier maps, and sort of put you in a position where you're not just at a tactical disadvantage, you're also at a sensory and visual disadvantage, because, I mean, it's not like the AI is going to be really affected by all the bright lights and music, but the ambience of the phones ringing next to mountains of dead bodies is truly chilling, and the fact a night out can go from 0 to 100 in a matter of minutes or even seconds is also very chilling. And I say that for context. Many years ago, me and the boys were at the club, going crazy on the dance floor as you do after multiple pints, and then we started to cough and sneeze uncontrollably. Someone in their infinite wisdom decided to unleash pepper spray on a packed nightclub dance floor, and within seconds, all the lights turn on, everyone is ordered to evacuate, and the police just storm into the place, having everyone just evacuate out of the place, and it was complete chaos. And that kind of just makes you think what it would be like to be in this club, having the time of your life, and then you just start hearing gunshots. People would have been trampled, screaming. You can only imagine what happened at the fire escapes, but I kind of just like that mental thought, as sick as it sounds, that really sort of highlights the chaos that would have unfolded before you stumble in on it. But I just think it's a fantastic level. Yeah, it's absolutely difficult, but it's not a large map, and it does feel rewarding if you manage to arrest the suspect and also manage to arrest a couple of the active shooters. I'm gonna put it in S tier. The next map is the sole reason why this video got delayed, because I can't formulate an opinion on it. I crashed out because I hate playing it. I don't find it necessarily fun, and it doesn't do anything unique, and that is the car dealership. If it was removed from the map, people probably wouldn't realize for a good week. Now, the map itself is simple. Go into car dealership, find some soft objectives, deal with some difficult suspects, and get out. Getting into long-range fights outside can be a challenge as you weave in and out of cars. There is an abundance of suspects that do occupy large open areas that gives you lots of opportunities to breach into, but coincidentally in that large open space, there's a lot of areas for the suspects to hide. Now, the reason why this map is so hard to write about is that it does nothing special, which does contradict my ethos of simple maps, and I commend it for it, but it doesn't have anything that makes it iconic or unique that gives a player a lasting impression or a lasting impact. For instance, in SWAT 4, you have the A-bomb nightclub with the scripted shooting, or the hospital giving away the entry team's location. Those are all unique aspects of pretty simple maps that I can talk about. You know, has it been like, oh gee, it's been like 20 years since that game released. How's your back feeling? But in regards to the car dealership, what's one iconic thing that you can really say about it and say was memorable? The thing is, I can't fault this map for being simple and bland, but I also won't praise it for not doing anything unique, hence why I'm gonna be putting it in C tier. The next map causes a fair couple of conflicting emotions in me, because on one hand, it's a great map, but on the other hand, there are some minor nitpicks that I don't like about it, and that is the farm map. The story is interesting because it's a farm ran by females who have been victims of crimes perpetuated by men to the point where they sit around all day planning how to take them out. You have to arrest several high-value targets, and getting to them is no walk in the park, since differentiating between suspect and civilian can be tough in some cases. But usually if they're carrying a fully automatic weapon, then chances are they're a suspect. But the theme of this map is pretty cool. On one hand, it has a creepy Resident Evil Far Cry 5-esque to it. It's got a cultist theming that makes you feel creeped out, but I also think they do overdo it a little bit in certain parts, but I don't want to knock it for that. I think it's great theme-wise. The map has a great big fat choke point that has killed me more times than I'd like to admit, especially when a suspect spawns on top of this tower. It can be very difficult trying to return fire. If you find yourself out in the open, you're guaranteed to get clipped from someone hiding on the perimeter. This map and Ides of March have admittingly been my anchor maps whilst playing the campaign, and you know, in my opinion, in terms of difficulty, I did loathe this map. If I did this video a couple of years ago, I would have put it in the pits with the post office because it genuinely did my head in, but it has grown on me. It is incredibly difficult and I struggled to complete it, but look, I'm not going to sit here and say it's not cool. And this might be a hot take, but I do prefer it compared to the original Cherryessa farm, not because of the theming or the ambience, purely because I can actually beat this level and I'm somewhat competitive, but I'm gonna be putting it in. So moving on to the next map, like a crackhead with a knife, I'm going headfirst into my criticism and utter disdain for this map and saying I hate it. Like, I just downright hate this map. I think it's pain. I think it's misery, and if all those words were a map, it would be Relapse. Why am I so strongly opinionated on it? Well, for starters, it's long and maze-like, that as you go up a floor, then you go down a floor into entirely different areas of the building. This map is a continuation of the club level, so the suspects are similarly armed with military-grade weapons. Some of the suspects can even look like civilians, such as hospital staff, adding onto the difficulty, which I'll admit is a pretty cool feature. The issue I have with this map is that it's just so unnecessarily large. I understand hospitals are big places, but the way they did it in the beta versions or early access was better by separating the two sections into two different game modes. They honestly could have just kept the main first floor area and then the downstairs area similar to what was done in SWAT 4, and that can retain the shock value of having the children's area, which, you know, I do kind of like that, but it really does show you the brutality of these suspects. But once again, like the club level, you have to arrest this guy, which by some miracle of the American healthcare system was able to reattach this guy's arm and also essentially give him a total facial reconstruction, because last time I remember him, he was missing a couple of limbs. But this leads back to the original question of the video: would I enjoy playing this map with my mates? Absolutely not, because we would find ourselves most of the time, we'd, you know, kill all the suspects, wouldn't really even bother trying to arrest a lot of them, and then we just have to run around looking for that last civilian. And truth be told, I haven't told them this, and I'm just going to reveal this now. Like, I would just sit in a corner and I'd just go on my phone because I could not be stuffed. Like, that's primarily a prime reason why I just despise this map. It's just tedium. And honestly, I would rather play Greased Palms 100 times before I am made to play this map. And because of that, I'm just going to be putting it in F tier. Now, moving on to the last map of the main campaign, which over the years has gone through some radical changes, and that is Hide and Seek, which initially feels like a last stand. You've played through the whole game, now it's finally time for the good guys to be victorious and shut down this trafficking ring. But as simple history says, fun fact, no, as it's made apparent that there are forces larger than you can perceive, and while you might arrest or kill the suspects, a lot of them are just low-level goons missions that will only have a small impact on the takedown of this organization. The layout of this map can be incredibly difficult with multiple long lines of sight that can be brutal. It's pretty linear in the sense you start from one end and finish at the other, and it's not too maze-like if you didn't miss anything, of course. The map has some good shock value with the women in the cargo container, which has been toned down, but also this long house of horrors that you walk through where you eventually run into your friendly neighborhood gimp. It's tough, it's hard. I'm talking about the map, not the gimp. And I understand this isn't necessarily a happy ending of a map, but I do kind of like how it gets the player wanting more and thinking, what else is out there? Will we get a continuation in a DLC to actually bring down this organization and get an answer to what Pfizer is up to? People might complain that it doesn't conclude the main story well enough. To an extent, I agree, but I am also a sucker for story elements that leave me wanting more and sort of at the end have me theorize who's behind it all, but we're probably never going to get an answer to that. But look, gameplay wise, the map is difficult and it can feel like storming the beaches of Normandy, especially if a guy is spawning up in the tower and raining hell down on you. But the gameplay, as I mentioned, it's definitely on the difficult side, but if you and the boys want to aura farm with night vision goggles and shoot to kill, this is a perfect map for you. But I wouldn't put it any higher than C tier, and to sound like a broken record, I do personally prefer the previous iteration of this map, but that's not to say that the final form of it is bad in any way. Moving on to the first DLC map that we got, and it's short and sweet, and that is Dorms, where a cyclone has ravaged LS and a bunch of homeless people have decided to take up residence in an abandoned apartment block, and of course there are cultist elements to it. It's short, sweet, and really enjoyable because it's not overly complex, and it's a good warm-up map in my opinion, and it also does get to demonstrate the aggression of some of the suspects, which is always funny when you're in the open hallway area and you just see a crackhead just sprinting at you at full speed from halfway down the hallway, and admittingly, it does put you on edge. Well, you can kind of see here as a little demonstration, but the map has a creepy atmosphere, very derelict, and the suspects and civilians do put up a strong fight. I'd say it's on the relaxing side. It's crazy to say, like it's relaxing having a crackhead run at you with a knife. But you can easily get this achievement, which did take a couple of tries for me to get, but it's a little detached from the rest of the maps that come after it in this DLC in terms of difficulty, but it has the same vibe as the Crack House in the sense that it's a good warm-up map, and personally, I prefer this map over this, but those little moments where a crackhead whose entire life has just been misery and, dare I say, pointless, and then in that one moment where they lock eyes with you, they decide in that very moment what their life mission has always been about. That is to charge at you with a knife. But look, it's a good little map. It doesn't do anything too crazy and it's fun. I'll put it in. Moving on to Narcos, where my years of Rotten.com, Live Leak, and Traces of Death make a resurgence in my mind because, believe me, I have tried to scrub that period of life to the pits of my mind, but as the name is pretty obvious, the cartel may be heavily involved. The map isn't too large, but it does have a semi-maze-like layout where if you get lost and let your guard down, you might find yourself getting shot at in between the fences or from the various houses on the outside of the main area. I also just noticed the pig head right at the start. I think it symbolizes him being a rat that is working for the police. I don't know, I never really noticed that. I just found it cool, but it's very visceral, disgusting, especially when you find the main civilian. It is challenging with the suspects having some crazily modded weapons, but it's not too difficult. It definitely ramps up the difficulty compared to the previous map, but it can be a challenge, and that's why I'm going to be putting it in. Moving on to the last map of the DLC, which really shows the contrast between people living in the slums just to get some protection from the elements to someone living in excess. We have Lawmakers, where environmental activists storm the place and take people hostage, which also includes the housekeepers and maids, which I find kind of ironic since you'd think these people would be for the people, you know, like people over corporations, and then they hold innocent fucking minimum waged workers who are probably the immigrants as hostages, you know? Like, I don't know, I just thought that was a funny thing to point out, but it's 3 stories high and pretty long, having you run from end to end because you also need to find the correct panic room this guy's family is in. Speaking of this guy, I like how there's some lore drops that make it seem like, you know, hey, he's not that bad of a guy, but when you handcuff him, it kind of kills the sympathy because he's a lippy, ungrateful bastard who honestly gave me no qualms picking him up and throwing him to the wolves or down a flight of stairs. The difficulty of this map can vary because sometimes the suspects can be held up in rooms where you breach, bang and clear, and it's pretty manageable, but sometimes they will sneak up on you from the other end of the house, either via the stairways or down one of the long hallways, and you can be daydreaming, trying to look out for evidence or civilians, and then you just get ambushed like that. The outside areas are underused or ever really used. I've never really needed to go out there, but it's right on the border length where it doesn't go into tedium territory, but by all means it's not a small compact map. I think it's a good one to end the DLC as you get a range of difficulties as a whole from all the other maps, and this is the large map of that DLC, and it kind of gives you that idea of high class suburban life in LS, and I'll be putting it in. Now we move on to the maps from the Dark Waters DLC, which personally I think is the worst DLC in the game. If I was kind of going to give you options on which one to spend your money on, I wouldn't spend it on this one, but I'll explain why. Now, the first map is Hijacked, and it's the best one in terms of size and not being tedious, which you'll find is the biggest complaint about this DLC, but a Qatari that's a fucking hard word. A Qatari oligarch is on his super yacht, and the police say he has to go to shore. Logically, he holds the people on the boat hostage with the potential of it becoming an active shooter situation, which, I mean, he can hold them hostage, but I mean, you know, where's he gonna go? The US Navy will shut that down. But this kind of leads on to my criticism of it being an active shooter situation where the suspects are quick to start executing civilians, and a trigger for this is how loud and aggressive you are. The general advice is once you take out the main guy, you can focus on being a little more methodical and slower. The map is 4 stories of navigation that can be confusing until you look at the map and realize it's a pretty simple layout with a fair amount of rooms to clear that interconnect with each other. Compared to the elephant map, it is a more frustrating active shooter situation where the civilians end up dying much quicker, but honestly this could just be down to my playstyle, but also the fact RNG can be a bitch on this map. But if you're just playing casually with mates, not too concerned with talk, bitching and moaning, I think it's a good map only if we exclude the active shooter element. But compared to the rest of the maps in this DLC, in my opinion it's the best one in terms of enjoyability, which isn't a hard bar to pass, which is why I'm going to be putting it in. Now we move on to a map that is straight out of MW2, and it's not called Leviathan for no reason, since it's long, confusing, where you don't know where it starts and where it ends. A group of environmental activists have somehow stormed an oil rig and are holding the workers hostage. The map flow is very long and confusing since there is multiple floors to cover with various of ways getting to and from them. As an added layer of difficulty, the suspects can shoot you from above or in between these thin gaps. There are so many angles that you need to hold that require you to be incredibly coordinated with humans, and I'll be brutally honest, I loathe this map. I hold it to the same standard as the hospital where I wouldn't voluntarily play it, but I can't knock it from a visual and music perspective. Spawning in and seeing the heli flying away, the crazy weather, the waves crashing down below is downright cool. The music is knocked out of the park. Based on the way I've described it so far and my disdain to playing it, you'd think I'd put it in F tier, but I can't ignore the intensity and high stakes of it. Honestly, if this was a map in Ground Branch where you play as a special forces operator, it would fit right in. Kind of strange having a local police force go into an oil rig and handle it. Look, it is over the top, but I can't deny that it is a cool freaking map, which is why I'm going to be putting it in D tier. I don't like this map. I don't like playing on this map. I never play this map with my mates, but look, I can't ignore that it's pretty cool. Now moving on to 3-letter triad, which if the landing of Normandy was a ready or not map, it would be this, since you spawn in, get mesmerized, you know what I mean. By admittingly, the map visually looks beautiful, but then it becomes all undone as you hear your teammates yelling into the void for suspects to get down, but you can't see them. But the suspects can see you. Spawning in from this location is just a no bueno. It is just terrible, and you will get absolutely vaporized before you get into the main area. So spawning from the alternate location is my advice. The suspects aren't wearing body armor, but do have very heavy weaponry. Now, this map is like a woman with a boring and plain personality, but is a 10 out of 10 in terms of looks. I don't like having to actually interact with it, but visually it's sexy, and the reason is because I love Cyberpunk 2077. That was out of left field, but it just reminds me so much of the Phantom Liberty DLC, as if it was just pulled straight out of it. Investors with hopes and dreams of developing this place, but the economy and nature took its toll. But it's a blend of capitalistic dream mixing in with abandonment and crime. I don't know how to articulate it, but visually I love looking at it. Personally, I would never play this map. I've never actually managed to beat it because it's that difficult, it's long, it's confusing, the suspects are on freaking crack. I don't like it. It's a big ass maze, and that's why I'm gonna be putting it in D tier, simply because visually I fucking love it. Moving on to the Los Swain, I'll just call it LS because I always get critiqued on how I pronounce LS, but the LS Stories DLC. These maps are all round bangers, well, both of these maps are outright bangers, but to start off with, we have the reincarnation of the removed fast food level in its final form. It's bigger, but not too big where it's a chore. It has one obvious entry point that is great for breaching. The map is plain and simple, and it has some difficult choke points like the main entry area where you can get shot from the kitchen and flashbangs can be difficult to throw into, and the main stairway where 3 armed suspects can materialize out of thin air. But the reason why I like the fast food level so much is because I'm someone that is, well, one word would be veteran, but the word I would use is victim of the fast food industry for many years. Having a map to just de-stress in a familiar environment is a plus, but seriously, the map is small, compact, the suspects aren't that difficult with only a few choke points that can cause a problem, except there was a recent AI update as of late that has made this map much more difficult to actually get a passing grade on, where the suspects would just start firing at civilians if they even just think of the concept of SWAT making a presence on the premises. And the map has become incredibly RNG based, and if you're trying to play the map seriously to get a good score on, it's incredibly difficult and it's in a bad state. But gameplay wise, ignoring that, it's fun, it's not difficult, and I'm glad they brought it back in a fully fleshed out form, and I do hope they do that for other removed maps that didn't make it to 1.0, which is why I'm going to be putting it in. Moving on to Stolen Valor, where you have to raid an apartment block because a colleague has mysteriously gone missing after being in pursuit of a drug dealer, and this is the end result. This map has some frustrating elements to it, but all round, in my opinion, it is a well-made map. Rather than being long and horizontal, it's much more vertical, which is a nice change compared to other maps in the game. But as much as I, over the years, have stated my disdain towards the trap system, I'm not gonna say it isn't the funniest thing hearing a drug addict get a Vietnam detox. It can be pretty frustrating trying to clear out the back area where a suspect can run down the stairs and ambush you, or you can get spotted from the big ass windows. But door wedges can absolutely help on this map to try and block off areas that suspects can run out from and sneak up from you from behind, which is something that I've experienced a fair bit on this map. But this is the best map to use a shotgun on and blow off the limbs of these suspects because it's majority close quarters, and that can include the suspects and civilians because they are quick to take up their roommates as hostages. But honestly, based on the horror stories I've heard of people having flatmates, I honestly don't blame them for being quick to take them up. It's a cool map. It has verticality. It has a bit of difference in the rooms that you experience in terms of theming. The suspects looking like the civilians can add on a layer of difficulty, which is always fun. And also on the top floor, you kind of realize that this guy is a Rising Storm 2 fan with some merch. Look, I think it's a fun, enjoyable map, and I do like getting my mates on it and baiting them to walk into a trap. And honestly, I'm going to be putting it in Now, moving on to the first map in the Boiling Point DLC, we have No Good Deed. The main difficulty of this map is that there are a lot of off angles and long concentrated lines of sight where trying to actually visually identify a target that's hitting you from across the park can definitely be a huge challenge. Especially when coupled with the bright lights, it can get a bit disorientating, but it does add a layer of difficulty. Speaking of difficulty, you have 150 seconds to stop the active shooters, because if you don't, well, they'll do exactly that, which does cause trying to get an S rank on this map pretty RNG based, or you and your mates are probably some of the best Ready or Not players if you can manage that. Look, personally, I am a sucker for theme parks, which is why I like the horrifying chaos of a place where families come to have a good time being turned into a literal house of horrors. I hope that doesn't make me sound like a psychopath, but some of the suspects are actually dressed as police officers, and my first time playing this map, I thought, hey, cool, can we interact with them? They've got police NPCs that can assist you like a Fallout 4 companion. No, I found out the hard way that they are not friends, they are foes. But if we were to look at the DLC as a whole, all of the maps are just on steroids and a different plane of existence when it comes to difficulty, and the suspects absolutely do put up a fight. But speaking of difficulty specifically about this map, I'd say it's around mid-tier, which means not a whole lot since the whole DLC is pretty fucking hard, but it's not an absolute chore and challenge to play, and it can be pretty difficult if you're just playing with one other person, which is why I'm going to be putting it in. Moving on to my favorite map from DLC, which has a confusing name. I don't know why this is called All Gods Burn and the previous map isn't called that, given the fact that people literally burn on that map. Either way, a mysterious group called the Black Sentinel rob a bank during the ensuing chaos after No Good Deed. This map isn't too large, but the reason why I like this map so much is breaching the main entry point is pretty damn fun, where you can bomb the entire area with flashbangs, 9 bangs are my personal preferred way of doing it, and gas grenades, because there are a lot of civilians. Some of them drop a couple of truth bombs, but the difficulty of this map is the suspects sitting on top here looking down on you like a German during the landing of Normandy. I've said the landing of Normandy so many times in this video. This is a 9,500 word script. I couldn't be fucked proofreading it a whole lot between you and me. If you've managed to stick around this far in the video, I've been recording for 45 minutes and I'm losing my mind a little bit here, but staying on topic, having the guys sit up top there is not too difficult for a couple of armor piercing rounds. There are alternate paths you can take to bypass it, of course. Since there are a lot of civilians who are on maximum aggression, you do have to be careful when shooting into a large crowd of people. The slight frustrating thing about this map is having to find all the weapon bags scattered around and trying to solve the puzzle of how you get into the vault, which randomly generates. And yes, I just straight up gave up and had to look up an answer to it, which didn't really help since it's completely random each time, but I have for the longest time wanted a bank robbery level, since SWAT 4 didn't really do it from memory. They do have the jewel store heist, but SWAT 3 did have a proper bank robbery level, but it's nice to see a return in a modern situation. This is hands down my favorite map in the DLC, and I'd say it's possibly the easiest map in my opinion if you're not trying to figure out the freaking puzzle of it, but that's why I'm gonna be putting it in. But after an hour, I can't believe an hour, holy shit, we get up to the last map on the list, and that brings back the removed MLO faction in spectacular fashion. That rhymes. If hell was a map, it would be this. It's nothing but pain, and with all due respect, at the point of making this script, I still haven't been able to beat it because it's just that difficult. I've done it with AI. I've done it with the full squad of my mates. We still haven't been able to beat it. The post office and hospital are like being born in Germany or Australia. This map is like being born in Afghanistan as a woman because it's just misery and you have no hope. And that is a new America. This map is extravagant. It has you fight through the LS City Hall with some of the most aggravating and aggressive AI ever seen in the game's history, borderline rivaling the MLO from the old farm map, which, speaking of MLO, that is exactly who you are going against, and I have to give this map credit for the fact it feels like you are the prey. way, because the AI will actually try to breach you. They know where you are if you aren't careful and walk through the IR sensors that give away your location. But why is this map so hard? Well, the suspects are cracked. It's a large area to cover that has you draining through your ammo and utilities if you aren't prepared or don't come with enough bait. The post office is like a Reaper Leviathan from Subnautica, Apex Predator, but if you try your luck with it, chances are you're screwed. A New America is like the gargantuan Leviathan. You got no hope. It's on a different plane of existence, but I honestly don't know what to say about this map other than it's pain. If you're a casual player, you'll get rinsed. If you are someone that has S-ranked the game with one arm tied behind your back, you'll meet your match. But I'm not going to spoil the ending. There is an ending to it. I haven't seen it. I did spoil it for myself on YouTube, but it's that aspect is pretty cool. I'm not going to speak on that, but as a whole, this map is extravagant. It's difficult, but it's not fun to play by any means, and that's why I'm going to be putting it in. But that is the Ready or Not map tier list. If you didn't hate me before this video, or this is your first time watching me, chances are you might hate me and think I'm an idiot with no taste, or you agree with me. Either way, I don't really care anymore. I just enjoy editing these types of videos. Look, if you enjoyed or hated today's video, like, dislike, I don't care. Subscribe, and I will catch you guys in the next video, whenever that may be. Peace.